Namaskar ji.
Honor and privilege to have you on the Rishihood campus, and you had a lovely interaction with all our learners here. A lot of great lessons came out of it, so I thought I should ask you in person some of those things which can contextualize it for a larger audience that is watching us online. Particularly when you began with talking about Tata's, it's 84 years, they have always been leading, Jamsetji's 150 years plus history. So when young people look at all this, their role models of industry leaders, the first name would not come as Jamsetji Tata, right? There would be very young startup guys that we see in Bangalore or Gurgaon. So how do we think, how do we make them feel that a person like Jamsetji Tata, who was the creator of the modern Indian industry, is also a role model? I think the book does a tremendous job of it. But as an academic institution, how do we bring up such heroes in their lives and tell them that these are actually the original heroes in that sense who have built the Indian industry? So I'm asking you from a perspective of a university that how do we bring such heroes into our curricula? How do we make them the role models or the ones that they should also look up to along with the more recent achievers that have been there? So your thoughts on that would be very helpful.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Shobhit, to you and Aditya and all others at Rishihood. I didn't know of the existence of Rishihood or what Rishihood is all about. And I'm truly happy that I accepted your invitation and came here. Otherwise, I would continue to be living in my own little bubble. We need in India universities like Rishihood, not because it's perfect, but because they are trying to do something which many are not. So congratulations and my best wishes.
Thank you.
The question that you asked is role models, and I think there's nothing wrong in young people having role models as some more contemporary leaders, whether they are startups or otherwise. It is not essential for a young person to have Jamsetji Tata or Mahatma Gandhi as their ideals. But for them to become aware is something that's a part of education. And my purpose in my co-author Harish Bhatt and I wrote this book because we felt that this message needs to go to a larger number of people. But they don't have to be your role models because there are many new role models. Let's face it, when I was growing up, my role model was Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, for example, or Jawaharlal Nehru. But it wasn't somebody who was there in the 1800s. But as I grew up and learned there are other role models, I got more and more. What I would advocate is for you and your colleagues in the faculty to consider whether, I don't know whether you call it inspirational science or moral science or whatever, there could be an elective where you discuss the biographies of great people. Different faculties can prepare it. It doesn't have to be the same faculty member. And they could have a session like this. So what was great about X or Y? And since you are Rishihood University, you don't have to choose political leaders, but people from the field of enterprise and science. You could choose Acharya Jagdish Chandra Bose. You could choose Meghnad Saha. Choose Fakir Chand Kohli, more recently. Narayan Murthy, which is even more recent. So maybe having an elective course of inspirational leaders who are not perfect could be a way to do it. And maybe a Jamsetji Tata, a Bajaj, a Godrej could feature there, and that would be a good value to their education.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. That can we learn business or nation building by studying the biographies of great industry leaders that India has produced? So that could be an interesting elective that we create.
It's an interesting elective. Not everybody will study it, but I think it's worthwhile. There's a professor in IIM Ahmedabad called Chinmay Tumbe. He's a historian, and maybe somebody like him, I'm not saying him, could help you to put this together. Maybe you could take your students when they go on a study tour to the archives in Godrej or the archives in Tata's, so that they themselves can see it when they go on their normal study tours.
For them to look at a span of 100 years, I mean, they would not have even conceived that such a thing is possible because they're seeing very recent companies. So how companies are built over decades and they last.
I mean, anybody who lives in Bombay knows that there's somebody called Dadabhai Nauroji. We've all heard the name. But I never read a biography of Dadabhai Nauroji till about 10 years ago. And realize what a great contributor to India he was.
They are all great case studies that we could actually use in our classrooms.
Encouraging students to take interest in biography. They can't do all the biography because they got other things to study. Then they will read more on their own.
Other thing that is interesting that came up in your conversation was the 10 P's that you have listed. a lot of it's about principles, purpose that comes in, right? But when we look at a typical business curriculum, it's all, more functional aspects of business that we learn. HR, we learn marketing, we learn finance. But there's very little thought given to actually what builds great enterprises or institutions like the Tatas have done. So that's something that is being battled within academia as well, that how do we bring in these things into formally, because that's going to create something lasting, or that is going to create a differentiator. So any thoughts on that how do we bring ideas like this into the formal curriculum in business education? That how do we create the future?
You guys are academics, so you would be better at it. I don't want to pretend to do your job. But as a practitioner with many years behind me, and this thought has passed my mind. That's why I've written 7 books on this.
Yes.
On 7 different companies. You can't write everything on Tata only as though they are the only model business. I've written on Marico, I've written on Biocon. They are also available.
Yeah.
And I would encourage Rishihood faculty. Whether it qualifies as research in an academic sense, I don't know. But to write biographies of respected business houses or how business institutions were built up. You could write about Asian Paints, you could write them as case studies for teaching in a class.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody is doing it already. But those are the ways to engage. Case studies are a good way to engage, but usually MBA schools take up case studies.
Yeah.
Your kind of university doesn't usually do that. But those are good ways to engage.
Yeah. So we do case studies, but we take it up from a very different perspective about how business transformation happened, or how we take specific instances of. But these are leadership lessons, and we build case studies on leaders themselves. That's an interesting part.
I much appreciate your curiosity and your interest to do all of this. But the fact of the matter is, there's that much you can do in 4 years. You have to teach them the stuff they came here to study.
Of course, yeah.
And but if you can create the utsah in their minds, the curiosity, that would be a huge achievement.
Thank you for saying that, because in the Rishihood graduate attributes, the first one is actually Jigyasa, and you have been emphasizing on curiosity since we met, asking questions and keeping that learning attitude in yourselves, because you can only do so much in 4 years, as you're saying. But if you have curiosity in your mind, then you'll be a learner for life, and and as you have also mentioned, that you keep learning as you go about doing this. From your career, right? I mean, long tenures at Lever and then at Tata. I was just meeting some of the learners outside. The natural question that comes to their mind is, how could someone be working in one company for so long? Don't they get stagnated, and don't they feel that, because that's not what they see around them, right? People switching companies quickly. So any advice or guidance on how do you grow with a company, and what does it take to last in a company for so long, to see many difficult projects through? I would love to hear from you, because there are not many people who have done this.
I would say this if the youngsters were here, but through your podcast maybe it can reach them. I always tell people, it doesn't matter how many companies you have worked in, because by the mere act of changing companies, you don't learn.
Yeah.
You learn by doing different things. It may be in the same company.
Okay.
Always ask yourself, am I still learning? And when you cease to learn, ask your company to give you another role so that you can continue to learn. If your company doesn't want it, or you don't like the company, then you may change your company. It is like, if I may take only as a metaphor, how can you stay married to the same person for 50 years? But by having 22 girlfriends, you have not improved your happiness in life.
Yeah.
You probably made it worse. But you learn to enjoy that person's company, but in a different way.
Yeah.
Before the children came, when the children were growing up, after the children are married. And the same thing in a company. In my Lever career of 31 years, I did 13 different jobs. I had 13 different bosses. Every 3 years I was doing something completely different. And that's what kept me going. And I would ask people to think of not whether you should stay in the same company, but are you learning all the time? If you're learning, you're like a plant which is growing.
Yeah.
If you stop learning, then it's time to think about what you can do about it.
Thank you for re-emphasizing that learning mindset that we also talk about at Rishihood. And as we discussed, Rishihood has the name itself comes from Swami Vivekananda's thoughts. A lot of what we do here comes from his philosophy of education. And I know Swami Vivekananda played a role in Jamsetji's life as well. So if you could tell our audience about what was that conversation that they had, and you write a line in your book saying that It's very rare that a monk and a business leader come together and then magic happens. So if you could narrate that incident to us for a larger audience, that would be very helpful.
So far I can make out, because I am going by records of what's in the archives and the books. Jamsetji was always a very curious person, and that curiosity manifested itself in incessant travel. I think he was out of Bombay and his comfort zone at home for probably half the year. And since you travel by steamer, not by aeroplane, a lot of time went in travel. And when he went in travel, he must have had a good suite or whatever it was. But he was always out talking to people.
Yeah.
Those were the ways in which his curiosity manifested itself. On a trip from Yokohama to San Francisco, if my memory serves me right, he met Swami Vivekananda. And perhaps being the curious person that he is, he says, what is this monk all about? Don't forget, Swami Vivekananda must have been at least, 30, 40 years younger than him. And he could have well had the supercilious attitude, ye koi kya hai, monk hai, bacha hai.
Yeah.
But he had a conversation with him, and from whatever records are available, it seems Swami Vivekananda, who was talking and thinking much beyond the age of 25, 30 that he was, he said, Mr. Tata, why don't you think of setting up a school of learning? Indians must learn the strength of our wisdom, and they must do their own science and technology. That's as much as there is available. The rest is imagination.
Yeah.
And he came back and he said, that's a good idea. And when he got a project report ready for Indian Institute of Science, I think he informed Swami Vivekananda also that I have not forgotten what you told me and I am preparing that project. This is the way in which he allowed himself to be influenced by many, many people. And that's what curiosity and learning attitude does to you.
Amazing. So traveling is, of course.
And your own story of how Rishihood was conceived of, is not, okay, there's no Swami Vivekananda, there's no Jamsetji Tata, but there are other people.
Yeah.
And these have the potential to be wonderful institutions.
Yes.
It is not assured.
Yeah.
And Indian Institute of Science has been a wonderful institution for 100 years, at least within Indian context, for no doubt. The challenge for academic institutions is, can I continue to be a wonderful institution for 100 years?
Yeah.
You can't see many. I won't mention specific names, but there are some storied names of yesteryear who are no more wonderful institutions, even an academic institution. What is the secret sauce of Indian Institute of Science is something that is be worthwhile to study.
Yeah. Another fascinating thing that I think about the Tatas themselves, and it's not in the book, but I am sure when you did your research it would have come out. You talked about three things that, what do you think of? You think of country first, then community, and then the shareholders, and that's how they built the whole Tata Group. For a community that has come from outside India, the Zoroastrians, and you talk about Zoroastrian thought as well, right? To take up India first in their thinking, that is very fascinating, right? You may always think of yourselves as migrants that have come as refugees here, but any thoughts on that how did they, and a lot of Parsis have done amazing work and contributed to India in great ways, right? The very inspiring community in such small numbers have contributed so big. So what is it in that community that has made them take up India as their homeland and have given so much back to India? So what is it in them that you can see is a
I will answer in two parts.
Yeah.
One is a general part, one is a Parsi part.
Yeah.
The general part, we are all migrants. I am a migrant, you are a migrant.
Yeah.
Depends on how far back you want to go and how much you want to acknowledge.
Yeah.
If you ask an Adivasi, he'll say all of these people came from somewhere else. We are the originals. There's no point getting into that.
Yeah.
The whole world is full of migrants. So that's the general point. Coming to the Parsis, they migrated 1200 years ago. People ask me, are you a Tamil? I said, yeah, I'm a Tamil who was born in Calcutta, who has earned his living in Bombay, who has lived in many parts of the world, and now a retired person. I speak Bengali, I speak Tamil, I speak Hindi, I can speak a bit of Marathi, a bit of Gujarati, and a bit of Punjabi. Now you decide whether I'm a Tamil. And then they say, well, that's very complicated. Yeah. I said, that's the part of India. It's a beautiful complication, right? The Parsis also came in the same way. They came under a different set of circumstances. They were being persecuted. And they have assimilated, like every other person, migrant in India has done. Most people who migrated into India, today there are many people with a Punjabi name, but their looks and all give you the feeling that they are from Afghanistan or somewhere else. You and I probably in our DNA, if somebody did a test, will find that there are traces of some ancestor having come from somewhere else. The Parsis, at least I can say, Jamsetji Tata, I don't know about all the other Parsis, he was not a religious person, he was a spiritual person. Which meant that something in religion inspired him, but he wasn't the type who went to the Parsi fire temple every Saturday or Sunday or something. Huma, Hukta, Havashta.
Yeah.
Good words, good thoughts, good deeds. Frankly, it doesn't have to be Zoroastrian religion, it can be Hindu religion, Islamic religion. No religious leader has said anything different.
Yeah.
And if you follow that principle, then there's nothing surprising about what the Parsis did. The challenge that the Parsis may be facing today is the pioneers have done their job and left wealth, but the ancestors, the successors don't have the same fire in the belly. Can you name a Parsi entrepreneur? With difficulty you'll name one or two.
Yeah.
But many youngsters have got it easy. And that is not because they are Parsis. It can happen to anybody, any community. To keep India's great advantages, we have enough poor people or middle class people who want to get ahead in life. So the fire in the belly is like a fire in the fire temple, it's eternal. That's India's great advantage. It's nothing to do with whether being a Parsi or a Tamil or a Bengali. And I think that's what you're trying to stoke in your university. Keep the fire going.
Yeah.
The Parsis have no doubt, but all the many contemporaries of Jamsetji Tata have not left long-lasting businesses.
Yeah. The way they assimilated, the way India has its ability to assimilate, and I mean they produce.
That's to the credit of the Parsis for assimilating.
Yeah.
It is also to the credit of India, which allows.
Yeah.
You know, I always say, if you go back to your old school chemistry lessons, if I put sugar into milk, it will dissolve. And then you'll call it a solution. If I put sand into milk, it will settle down.
Yeah.
You'll call it a precipitate. But if I put some other material into the milk, it will coagulate.
Yeah.
It will be called a colloid.
Yeah.
A colloid is one where it's neither in solution nor is it a precipitate. India is a colloidal society. There are Marathas who've gone and settled in Tanjore. They will still speak Tamil with a Marathi accent.
Yeah.
There are Gujarati Saurashtrians who will do the cloth trade in Tamil Nadu. And conversely, there are Tamils who have moved to other places. It's a fabulous fabric.
Yeah.
India is such a fabulous fabric. I wish we could celebrate it even more than we do. We do celebrate it in music, in art, in language. It's wonderful. And the Parsis are one part of that fabric.
I mean, this thing about perseverance and the way you say fire in the belly to continue. One question that comes up, and this is also one of the learners was asking me, is with the new global financial system, quarterly results, venture capitalist funded startups that are asking for growth, incessant growth, can we still retain, and you are trying to address this to the learners as well, that how do you maintain your ethical values, the strong ethical fabric that the company should have, having that long duration thought that eventually things will turn out well? Are the conditions different or they are still the same?
No, you are right in saying the conditions are different.
Yeah.
There is pressure and that will keep happening generation to generation. But are we raising our children the way my great-grandfather raised my grandfather? The chances are no. The facilities were different, the circumstances were different, the economics were different. But there's one thing that most of us can, to the extent we can trace it, say they raised their children with as much love and care as they could provide.
Yeah.
Within certain limits of being in a village or income or whatever. Otherwise, we would not be the beneficiaries. In the same way, I tell young people that if you flood your life with compassion, as Swami Vivekananda would say, the chances are you're going to have your eye on the long term also.
Yeah.
But if you flood your life with the short term, which is quarterly results, that's a necessary evil, but it's there. You have to live with it. Just like you and I will tell our children, better you have to get good marks, otherwise you won't get into Rishihood University. Right? But that doesn't mean it's at the expense of love, compassion, spiritualism, good behavior, good civic sense. You and I have not been sent to specifically learn. We might have studied civics for 1 or 2 years in school, but that's about it.
Yeah.
How did you and I learn to be good citizens?
Yeah.
But many of our classmates have not learned to be good citizens. Because if you're raised with a value, so flooding your family, your life, your business, I'm using the word compassion in a very broad sense, with humanism. Good values, good compassion for other human beings, humanism. These are virtues that have been there and have made the difference. Like genetic mutation, it has produced the successful ones and the unsuccessful ones. Continue to do that.
Some of these are timeless values like compassion, and
Absolutely.
and it's our choice that we amplify that, and we just don't get driven by the necessary evils, as you said, that our quarterly results.
When we are very young, all of us have been slightly misled or
Yeah.
grossly misled when we were young.
Yeah.
But we have learned from it.
Yes.
But some people didn't learn from it.
Yeah.
And I think perhaps at my age, and I wouldn't say your age, you're still much younger, but it is appropriate to recall that there are some things that have been going on for generations. Take the best of it. And we got parts of our own families in our history where some branches have gone off being a bit wayward. In every family there will be some such stories. But we know that we must raise our families with the best that we can.
Yeah.
The best may not be good enough.
Yeah.
That is not for you to judge, but do your best.
Yeah.
That's what every parent would like to do.
Yeah.
So do exactly the same. Lead your life with as much compassion, as much humanism, as much humility, and as much values as you can. If it's not good enough, okay, but try your best.
Yeah.
That's the value I would like all the students of not only Rishihood but all the other universities to have.
Thank you, sir, for sharing those pieces of advice with all of us. Because I think some of these things can only come through life experience, and you have distilled your entire life experience into the short messages that I think we can all take away and try to implement in our life.
Well,
Thank
I
you
hope
once
so,
again.
and I hope each of us will find his own path.
Yeah.
But may the path be one of happiness. I always wish people not for great financial wealth, but human wealth.
Yeah.
And that is what my wish is for you. Okay?
Thank you.
very
Thanks
much.
a lot. Thank you.
Great pleasure to have been
Thank
here.
you.